chocolate with cigarettes inside. The Japanese private stared at the brown paper wrapper in his hands, reading the English letters slowly, sounding them out like a foreign spell. It was July 23, 1944, on the shattered island of Saipan, and this small rectangle of food had just undone years of certainty. The shock did not come from gunfire or artillery. It came from a meal. By the summer of 1944, the Imperial Japanese Army was already starving across the Pacific. On islands like Guadalcanal, New Guinea, Saipan, and later Peleliu, supply lines had been cut to ribbons by American submarines and aircraft. Japanese soldiers were issued rations designed for short campaigns: rice, dried fish, pickled plums, never imagining a war that would last years on coral islands where nothing grew. By contrast, the United States had turned food into a logistical weapon. The American field rations were not elegant, but they were relentless. The C ration, officially standardized in 1938, arrived in olive drab cans stamped with black ink: meat and beans, meat and vegetable stew, hash. Each box contained crackers sealed in waxed paper, powdered coffee, sugar, salt, chewing gum, matches, and often a small bar of chocolate. Later versions included cigarettes, Lucky Strike or Chesterfield, packed directly into the ration. To American soldiers, it was bland, heavy, and repetitive. To Japanese soldiers who encountered it for the first time, it was bewildering. On September 17, 1944, during the opening days of the Battle of Peleliu, men of the 1st Marine Division overran a Japanese supply cave near the Umur Ridge. Inside, along with rusted Arisaka rifles and handwritten farewell letters, they found something unexpected: empty American ration tins, neatly stocked, rinsed clean. The Japanese defenders had been eating the enemy's food. Private First Class Eugene Sledge, later famous for his memoir With the Old Breed, recorded seeing Japanese bodies with American ration cans clutched in their hands, sometimes pierced by shrapnel. These men had died not in the act of charging, but while eating, trying to draw calories from a war machine that had already outpaced them. For Japanese soldiers, food was not just sustenance, it was ideology. The Imperial Army taught that discipline meant endurance. Hunger was a test of spirit. Complaining about rations was shameful. Soldiers were trained to believe that American troops were soft, pampered, dependent on luxuries, incapable of surviving hardship. The reality inside a captured ration crate challenged that belief at a molecular level. The American ration was engineered, not symbolic. Each C ration provided roughly 3,600 calories per day, dense protein, fats, sugars, designed to keep a man fighting even when exhausted. It did not rely on fresh cooking. It did not require rice fields or supply trains. It could be eaten cold, in the rain, under fire. On Leyte in November 1944, a Japanese corporal captured by the 24th Infantry Division reportedly asked through an interpreter how often Americans ate meat. When told every day, he fell silent. His own unit had been surviving on one handful of rice every 2 days, supplemented by boiled grass and occasional rats. The shock was not envy alone, it was fear. Japanese soldiers understood logistics. They knew that an army that could feed itself anywhere, anytime, was an army that could not be starved into submission. American food did not rot in the jungle. It came sealed, standardized, identical whether issued in North Africa, Normandy, or the Pacific. The same beef stew eaten by a Marine on Saipan could be eaten by a paratrooper in Holland. That uniformity carried psychological weight. Captured diaries from the Japanese 43rd Infantry Division on Saipan describe American rations as endless. One entry dated July 10, 1944, reads, "Enemy food is beyond counting. Even the dead carry more." Another soldier wrote that American prisoners do not beg for rice, a detail that unsettled him more than artillery fire. Hunger had always been a weapon Japan assumed it could endure better than its enemies. Instead, it became a mirror reflecting a fatal imbalance. There was also confusion. Some Japanese soldiers initially distrusted the rations, suspecting poison. Others opened the cans and smelled unfamiliar scents, tomato sauce, processed meat, sugar-heavy chocolate, and hesitated. But hunger erodes doctrine quickly. On Iwo Jima, February 1945, Japanese defenders under General Tadamichi Kuribayashi were ordered to conserve every grain of rice. Many went days without eating. When American supply dumps were overrun during night infiltration raids, Japanese soldiers did not always take ammunition first. They took food. Marine accounts describe ration crates slashed open, chocolate missing, cigarettes gone, crackers crushed into pockets. Some Japanese soldiers even reused American ration tins to cook thin rice porridge over smokeless fires, careful not to reveal their positions. The irony was sharp. An army that preached self-denial was now surviving on the enemy's abundance. For American soldiers, this realization came slowly. They complained endlessly about rations, about the metallic taste, the monotony, the way grease congealed in the cans. Few understood that those same rations were silently winning battles elsewhere, breaking resistance without firing a shot. Food kept Americans moving. At Anzio, at Bastogne, at Okinawa, soldiers could be cut off and still eat. On December 22, 1944, while the 101st Airborne Division was surrounded at Bastogne, they still received ration drops. Japanese units in similar situations often starved within weeks. This contrast reshaped the psychological battlefield. Japanese soldiers began to realize that individual bravery could not overcome industrial scale. You could outfight a man, you could not outproduce his country. By 1945, captured Japanese officers openly admitted this. One naval lieutenant, interrogated after the fall of Okinawa in June 1945, reportedly said, "We knew the war was lost when your soldiers ate better in the jungle than we did in our barracks." The shock of American field rations was never about taste, it was about inevitability. Each sealed can was a quiet declaration, "We planned for this." For the Japanese soldier, raised on the idea that willpower could substitute for material, that realization cut deep. Hunger became constant, morale thinned. Faith in ultimate victory cracked not under bombs, but under the weight of an enemy who could feed millions across an ocean. In the end, when Japanese soldiers looked at American rations, they were not just seeing food. They were seeing the shape of defeat, wrapped in wax paper, stamped with dates, and delivered on time.